Tonight, of course, is a very special night, special for me. Many years ago, 10, maybe 12 years ago, I met Jeremy Gimpel. I think we met here, and then we met in Jerusalem more intimately. And the relationship between us, not just me, but us and Jeremy, started off slowly, but we all knew, I feel like we all knew that it was going to blossom. There was something there that we didn't quite understand, but we knew that God had something for us. That's us, Fellowship and Jeremy. And we've held on to that. And there's been a challenge, many challenges, in fact, for this relationship, but we've overcome. The enemy, the evil one, Hasatan, never ceases to challenge, but those who walk in faith will never relent. And so we didn't relent, and this relationship is where we are right now. And at this point, I still feel like we're just beginning. We don't know what the end of this relationship would be. What would it blossom to be? We don't know. But I know this, it's going to be good. Because so far, the relationship has been wonderful, filled with faith, miracles, and really powerful encounters. So with that, I want to introduce tonight, I don't have to introduce him. I want to give you Jeremy Gimpel, Rabbi Jeremy Gimpel.
Okay. Power. Is this on? Everyone can hear me? Okay, excellent. Okay, good. Okay. So there's a lot happening right now in the world. There's a lot happening in Israel, and it's confusing, it's daunting, it's seemingly overwhelming. And when that happens, the Torah teaches us to go back to the basics, back to the fundamentals. If we get the foundations right, everything else really will fall into place. So what I want to do tonight is not only talk about Israel and what's happening there, but I really want all of us to go on a little bit of a journey back to the roots of what it is to be a believer in the world. And so I was invited about a month ago to London to host a Shabbat there for the Jewish community. And they asked me on Friday to go speak to the high school students. So I said, no problem, happy to do that. I'm already in London anyway. Who would I rather speak to than the Jewish high school students in London? Happy to do that. So a few hundred kids gathered together in their auditorium, and I asked them a question. I said, in the last 100 years, what is the greatest innovation, the greatest progress, the thing that we've done that has absolutely been a game changer for humanity? And each one of the kids politely raised their hand, and each one had their own answers. One said, oh, it's the internet. One said it's electricity. One said it's solar panels. One said artificial intelligence. Each person with their own answers of the most amazing thing that humans have been able to accomplish. And really, if you think about it, like the advancements in technology and biology, and just like what we've done in the last 100 years is mind-blowing. And I said, well, we take it for granted because, we go to synagogue every Saturday, and we read the Torah. And those that go to church, they read the Bible, and we just kind of that's just been a part of our day-to-day life. But it's important, if we're going all the way back to the fundamentals, to just have a moment of awe. And what do I mean by that? Isn't it amazing that the Bible was written, the Torah was written over 3,000 years ago? And humanity, with all of its innovation and all of its progress, no one has even come close to producing any literature that has even close to the depth, the dimensions, the impact, the wisdom of the Torah. No one has even come close. I asked the people in London, what's the bestseller in London? Harry Potter? It's not even in the same, nothing has ever come close to the depths of the Torah. That until today, in 2023, rabbis and priests and mystics and scholars and academics and psychologists are just pulling out wisdom from this ancient living word that continues to provide inspiration and guidance for man in 2023. Understand, 3,000 plus years ago, the mighty Egyptian empire, they were still writing with pictures on the wall in hieroglyphics. And some desert nomadic people was wandering through the desert, and at Sinai produced this literature that, what can we call it other than a revelation? Like this revelation of divine wisdom was brought into the world that changed human history forever, that established the moral fabric of our reality as we know it, and no one has ever come close. With all the artificial intelligences that there are, no one has been able to produce such wisdom ever. So okay, that's important. And I already got their attention, and that's fun. And then I said, well, here's the second question. Second question is, this divine wisdom, it's not all of the divine wisdom. It's like a a revelation of the divine wisdom. It's like a ray of light from the divine wisdom. And it came down at a certain time to a certain people. It happened at a certain time. But it's like a piece of the divine wisdom. And in fact, all of the Tanakh continued to be revealed throughout centuries upon centuries. But when you look at the whole Hebrew Bible, the whole thing is actually one long story. And that's really unique. No other spiritual texts are written like that over hundreds of years, and you can kind of chart it out from Adam and Eve to Noah, and then Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then they go down to Egypt. They're enslaved in Egypt. They go out of Egypt. They travel through the desert. Then Joshua finishes the Torah going into the desert in the book of Joshua. They live through the book of Judges. Then King David. Then Solomon builds the temple. Nebuchadnezzar destroys the temple. They're exiled from the land. And then they're in the book of Daniel, the book of Esther, and then Ezra and Nehemiah at the end of the Bible. And Malachi, they all come back at the end, and the whole thing is actually one long story. And that's pretty unbelievable. Why is that? Why would the divine revelation, this divine wisdom that was brought to the world, why would it come in a story form? Meaning, if it was a book about the law, okay, so tell me, okay, wear these on the corner of your garments, do this, don't eat that, yes, do this. Just give me a list of laws, but that's not the way the Torah is given. It's given over in a story. And there's wisdom. There's the book of Proverbs. But that was written by Solomon, who's the son of King David, and that's a whole other story. So interwoven within this grand narrative are wisdom and spirituality in the book of Psalms, and there's all of the prophecies that are in there, but it's all within the context of one giant story. Why? Why is the Tanakh, why was the divine revelation, why was prophecy given to us in a story form? And I'm sure there's a lot of answers to this, but the one that touches my heart, and the one that I think that all of us need to adopt and really allow it to go from our head into our heart, and that would really provide a path for us in these sort of cloudy times, is that the Bible was written as a story to teach us how to see ourselves, to teach us how to see each other, to teach us how to see the world around us. The Bible is a story because the story isn't finished yet. This generation, 2023, what's happening right now in our lifetime is the next book in the Bible. Just the prophet hasn't come to write it down yet. But the prophecies that were given to us thousands of years ago, they're manifesting themselves today in our generation. And now our generation has the opportunity to actually live out those prophecies and then culminating the greatest book, the greatest story humanity has ever told. And so that means that we are actually, if we choose to be, we have the opportunity to actually author our story within God's story. We can choose which character we want to be in that unfolding story of the Bible. And so all of you know, of course, about the Arugot farm. And the Arugot farm is situated in the mountains of Ziph, right outside of Bethlehem. In the mountains of Ziph, the Bible says something amazing. It says when David kills Goliath, so the first king of Israel, Saul, becomes insanely jealous, chases David down and tries to kill him. And it says that David escapes to the mountains, the wilderness, and the caves of Ziph. Actually, in 2017, when Fellowship came to the Arugot farm, we actually took a little hike down into one of the caves that King David lived in. That King David spent time there, years there. He assembled his mighty men there. Those mighty men that King David assembled, those were his most loyal soldiers for the rest of his life. That was his Delta Force. That was his elite commando soldiers that were never injured in battle, that always went out with him, that guarded David, that protected David. So in some ways, the mountains of Ziph, that's where David became the leader. His leadership, the army of Israel was built in the mountains of the Arugot farm. In some way, the kingdom then, his leadership was established there before he became king. Now, here's something amazing. If you look at the book of Chronicles, it lists a lot of David's mighty men. About half of them weren't Jews. Now, that's really important because when we read the stories of the Bible, those aren't just stories of history. Those are actually prophecies in templates. Those stories that are written there are mirrors of what will happen one day. That means that just as the king's army then was established not only of Jews, but believers from all of these different nations that joined David, so too in the end of day, the king's army is not just going to be the Jews in Israel, but believers from around the nations that join themselves to the king of Israel, that join themselves to Israel in that day. I mean, when you think about it, everyone knows Uriah the Hittite, that was Bathsheba's husband. Hittite is not a last name. Uriah the Hittite was one of the nations that Uriah came from. He left that nation and then joined Israel and became one of David's soldiers. So too, there were many, many, many of David's men were actually believers from among the nations. And that is a prophecy that is meant to unfold in our generation. Now, here's a beautiful idea. In the book of Zechariah in chapter 2, it says like this: "Sing and be glad, O daughter of Zion, for behold, I am coming, and I will dwell in your midst. Many righteous among the nations will join themselves to Hashem on that day, and they will become a people unto me. And I will take Judea as my portion upon the Holy Land, my inheritance forever." So two things happen in Zechariah in chapter 2. One, it says that the righteous among the nations, a lot of the translations there, they just say, and the nations will join themselves to God on that day. Nations is amim. Goyim are the righteous individuals among the nations that join themselves to Hashem on that day. So the Hebrew is quite clear on that it's the righteous among the nations that join themselves to Israel on that day. And then Zechariah says, and they become a people unto me. Meaning the final move isn't about Jews, it isn't about Christians, it's not about this nation or that culture or that language. It's like God's people, God's children. They become a people unto me. A new movement happens in the world, but that means that it transcends religion. It transcends nationalities. Something else happens as we enter into this time in history. And so then we really have to go to the core of it. What's supposed to happen? How are we to know? Meaning, there's an argument here in this room. I'm a Jew, you're a Christian, you think I'm wrong, I think you're wrong. How can we ever get along? We have different religions, we have different backgrounds, we have different cultures. I speak Hebrew, you speak English. What are we going to do? So there's an answer. And the answer actually lies in Abraham. Abraham didn't have a religion. Right? Okay. Well, that's really interesting. He was the first Hebrew. He was the first Jew. And that's been a question that's haunted me my whole life. I was like, Abraham, he was the first. And then he didn't have a religion. I mean, Moses came centuries after Abraham. So what did Abraham have? What was he? I mean, he prayed. We know that. He prayed for Sodom and Gomorrah. He had a relationship with God. We know that. Yeah, God. Yeah, he had a revelation. He had some sort of experience. He had an encounter. But then Moses came along. Moses came along and he gave us the Torah. And it's like, okay, do this. Don't do this. This is the path of righteousness. These are God's ways in the world. Here you can navigate through this way. So then Moses revolutionized Abraham's reality. All of a sudden now we have a way of being in the world. Then there was a temple. There was a temple in Jerusalem with animals and sacrifices and wine. And now it's 2023. We have TikTok rabbis. What are TikTok rabbis? And what is the connection there? I mean, if you really think about that, from Abraham to Moses, and then the temple, and then the second temple period, Jesus came and brought the biblical ethos to the nations. Then after the destruction of the temple, the Jews with the rabbis tried to hold on to like what they could and kind of preserve Judaism, that one day we'd make it back to Israel. And now it's 2023. Some of us are back in Israel, and some of us rabbis are on TikTok. And you're like, what is the connection between Abraham and Moses and the temple in 2023? What is that? Those outward expressions, those religious realities are totally different from the outset. Meaning someone that's living in rabbinic Judaism would look at temple Judaism and be like, wow, what is that? Someone in temple Judaism would look at rabbinic Judaism. I mean, it's just like different expressions, but they're still Jews. They're still believers. It's still the God of Israel. They're still the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So what is that? If we can get to what is the common thread, what is the heart, what is the spirit that connects all of those centuries and millennia from Abraham all the way until today, if we can aim at the heart of it, maybe there we can crack the code. And we can realize what all of us are actually should be aiming toward, because it's beyond religion. And it's beyond nationality. It's going all the way back to Abraham. And isn't it marvelous? That what's happening in the Middle East, I mean, it's, of course, all you hear about is the negativity. But I want you to know, last Hanukkah, my family and I, we went to Dubai for Hanukkah for 3 days. It was cheaper to go to Dubai than to Eilat. And we went to Dubai, and I'm walking around an Arab Muslim country with my tzitzit out and a big Israeli flag on my chest, on my t-shirt. Walking around Dubai, in my life, I never imagined that I would ever be allowed to walk around an Arab Muslim country, and people treated us like royalty. They were so excited that Israeli Jews came to Dubai for Hanukkah. And what is the name of that peace process that actually, if you look at a map, what is the promise to Abraham? From the Nile to the Euphrates, I mean, if you actually look at the Abraham Accords, you'll start seeing something's unfolding of biblical proportion. It doesn't say that the Jews are going to inherit all of that land. Abraham is going to inherit all of that land. Now imagine Abraham. Abraham is the father of every Jew. He's the father of every Christian. He's the father of every Muslim. And now imagine that. He was promised the name Abraham, Av lehamon goim. You will be the father of many nations. And here we are, 3,000 years later, looking at another promise in the Bible that absolutely manifested itself, because he's the father of civilization as we know it. And what is the force that is bringing this new era upon the Middle East? The Abraham Accords. The covenant of Abraham, where all of us are now allowed to sort of unite under one father. That's exciting. And so what was it about Abraham? What did he have? What did Moses have? What did all the rabbis throughout the centuries have? What were they trying to teach us? What were they trying to preserve? What were they trying to hold on to? And so I'm sure that there's a lot of answers. But this is the answer, again, that guides my life. And it's really the covenant that I have in my relationship with Tehillah, my wife. And I believe that what the Torah is constantly trying to point us to is that we have the ability to live a guided life. To live a guided life. We can't always understand where we're being guided to, and we can't understand necessarily the ways of God. But if we listen, if we open our eyes, we can absolutely be connected to the source and be guided in our life. You know, in our mountains, after we started building it, we said, we were sent by the Minister of Tourism and by the mayor of our area of Gush Etzion, and they said, well, this area it's zoned for tourism. And we're like, it's like the deepest settlement in Israel at the edge of the desert behind the caravans of Ipe. Like, no one is going to come here. The tourist attraction, it's considered dangerous. It's considered political. I don't think anyone is ever going to. This is mission impossible. But then when you stand there and you overlook the Dead Sea from one of the highest mountains in Israel, and you see the dramatic drops and the cliffs and the caves, we're like, you know what? This can't be a regular tourist attraction. This really needs to be a mission-based reality. We're going to make this a center for spirituality, a center for prayer and music and worship, a place where people can go and connect to the spirit of King David that was in these mountains. And then about 2 years later, after we start building the Arugot farm, a friend of mine sends me a midrash. A midrash is sort of like the collection of the oral traditions of Israel that were sort of pieced together throughout the centuries. And they sort of fill in the blanks where the Bible doesn't tell us the behind-the-scenes stories. And so according to the midrash, most of the book of Psalms was written in the mountains of Ziph before David became king. And then we can really understand something marvelous. Why did he run to the mountains of Ziph? He could have gone anywhere. Why would he run to the mountains of the Arugot farm? We realized, David grew up in Bethlehem. Bethlehem is 15 minutes away from our farm. So we have a flock of sheep today at the Arugot farm. And we take our sheep out usually for about 8 hours a day. But in the wintertime, sometimes we'll take the sheep out for a month at a time. Just let them go and all the green grows after the rains. So David, 3,000 years ago, used to do that. He would take his sheep out into the mountains for weeks at a time. So he knew where all the caves were. He knew where all the waterholes were. He knew how to live around the mountains of Ziph. Because that was his grazing ground. That was his backyard. But then what happened when he was alone in those mountains for days upon days, connecting to himself, connecting to the land of Israel, connecting to God? That's when he wrote his love letters to God. That's when he wrote the book of Psalms. And so every Catholic in the world, that's 1 billion people, every Christian, every Protestant, every Jew in the world, King David taught the whole world how to pray. And those prayers came into the world in the mountains of the Arugot farm. And we said, we're going to make a place of music and worship and prayer and meditation. It's like, we just scratched the rocks and we're like, oh my goodness, the DNA of this place was destined to be a place of prayer and worship and song and meditation. This is where the prayers came into the world that taught the world how to pray to God. What a marvelous reality we're making in the Arugot farm, and we sort of stumbled into that destiny by accident. And then, of course, the Queen Elizabeth, she had a funeral many months ago now, and it was the most televised event in the world. More than the Super Bowl, more than the World Cup. Everyone around the world, for whatever reason, wanted to watch the Queen of England be buried. And I didn't watch it, but I heard that in the funeral, they read out Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall feel no evil. David was literally in our mountains. by himself with his sheep. And he's, imagine just thinking to himself, these sheep, they don't even see me, but I'm guiding them to the water that's right around the ridge here. And, I don't always see God in my life, but, he's guiding me to where I need to go. Oh, a Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not lack. So David's actually teaching us how to relate to God. And it's really quite deep, because if we are the sheep and he is the shepherd, so there's two ways that I communicate with my sheep. I take them out now once a week with my children. So you have two. You can whistle. If you whistle, and they'll follow. So you can just watch my 8-year-old Noam. He'll go, and 90 sheep will follow this 8-year-old into the mountains. It's really a beautiful thing to see a little Judean boy going out into the mountains with 90 sheep behind him. But sometimes there'll be a dumb sheep, because sheep are not very intelligent. They just follow the other sheep. It's really amazing to see that. And one will sort of go off, and I have to take I have a Nerf bat, because when I whack them, I don't want it to hurt them. So it's soft. So I have to whack them sometimes. And that's what David says, your staff and your rod shall comfort me. Because he's the sheep in this analogy. And so either we can listen to God's whistle, and we can follow him, but if we sort of stray off the path, I'll have to whack the sheep. There's a cliff right here. You go to the left, there's a cliff right here. He's just going to walk off the cliff. So I have to whack him to make sure he goes back on line to protect the sheep, because he's about to walk off the cliff. There's no difference. There's no difference in our own life. Either we can listen to a thin, soft, silent voice like a whistle, and we can follow that, or we're going to get whacked. But the whack isn't the punishment. The whack is going to make us not fall off the cliff if we understand that. So the challenge sometimes come upon us, that's actually just correcting us, strengthening us, bringing us back to where we need to be. If we can live a guided life, that's what that means. So what is the Torah then? What is the Torah? So there was one time, my buddy Ari and I, we were studying in the Old City with a great mystic. His name is Rabbi David Aaron, an amazing man. And he's kind of teaching us sort of the secrets of the Torah, and he's a very spiritual person. And he's got a long red beard, and we're all sitting around a table. In the middle of the class, he turns to us and he says, there's Japanese music everywhere. And I remember looking at Arby like, what is he talking about? He's like, it's all around us. There's Japanese music all around us. And I raised my hand. I'm like, Rabbi, I know you're very spiritual, but I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, no, it's true. There's Japanese music everywhere. If we just had a short-wave radio and we tuned into the right frequency, we would literally hear Japanese music that's being broadcast from Japan, reaches all the way to the Old City of Jerusalem. We're just not tuned into the right frequency, but it's right here in the room. And he says, so too, God is constantly broadcasting to us, guiding us in our own life. And what is the Torah? The Torah is actually tools to help us fix our antenna that we can get good reception. Because here's the deal, and I'm speaking specifically to the younger people in the audience right now. The most important decisions of your life are going to come from the inside, whether you like it or not. Who you're going to marry, what you're going to study, where you're going to live, what career are you going to pursue. The big decisions are going to come from the inside. You're just going to have to trust your gut. You're going to have to trust that intuition. So better to make sure that that intuition is tuned in. And so what is the Torah doing to us? It's creating an embodied knowledge. What is an embodied knowledge? In Hebrew, we call it da'at. Da'at is not just an IQ or wisdom. It's an embodied knowledge. And I think a good analogy for an embodied knowledge is like you get into a car. You turn on the key, and you just start to drive. You're not really thinking about it anymore. You're stepping on the gas. You're stepping on the blinker goes on. You're not really thinking, well, now I'm going to step. It's just a part of who you are. It's an embodied knowledge. You already know how to drive so well. You can listen to a podcast and have a conversation and be driving all at the same time because the knowledge of how to drive is so fully integrated, it's a dot. And that's what Isaiah says, and the world will be covered with the knowledge of God. That's da'at Hashem. The world will be covered with the da'at of Hashem, like water covers the sea. That's why it's when Adam knows, he knows Eve. That's not just a knowledge. That's like an intimate relationship, connection, and embodiment of that relationship. And so the Torah is teaching us, give to tzedakah, give to charity. And when you do that, you pull the money out of your pocket and you give it, you actually become a giving person. And it's training us because if you become a giving person, then you're a little bit more open. Because you're not closed up. You're open to what? Open to reception. So the Torah is the tools to allow us to receive good reception. That when we have to make decisions in our life, we're living a guided life. We actually try to find that whistle and then follow that. Now, most of the time, God will give us a pillar of fire. That's what it says. When we left Egypt, and all of you know that the Torah is just a blueprint. It's a template for our soul. And it's teaching us the beginning of our journey, wherever you are, all of us are in Egypt. And our goal is to enter into the promised land. All of us are in Egypt right now, where we are. We are who we are now. And there's this person that we could become. There is this person that we could be. That's our promise. That's who God created us to be. That's our promised land. How are we going to go from who we are now to who we could be if our soul was fully revealed in the world? So God will give us a pillar of light. Pillar of fire. But that pillar of fire is like mountaintops away. There's a million people leaving Egypt. So that pillar of fire means like a faint light off into the distance. And that's just enough because I know which direction to aim my life now. I know, turn into the left. Oh, maybe I'm going to aim a little more to the right. That's the light over there. I'm definitely not going down that path. That path has no light. I'm going to walk in that light. And that is the path, actually, what it means to walk in the light. Meaning, we're about to start the time of Tshuva. We're about to start the high holidays now. So if we have a path of where we are now and who we could be, and we walk on that path, well, that's to walk in the light, the pillar of fire. What happens? Everyone in life, no matter who you are or what you're doing, all of us are going to veer from the path. There's just no way around it. The world is too crazy to not veer from the path. And then what does Teshuva mean? Teshuva means to return. That's what it means. It doesn't mean repent. It means, what are we returning to? We're just returning to the path. We're returning to the path that God had destined for us in order to manifest who we could be in the world. That's what it is to live a godly life. And so when I first came to the Argo farm, I got out of my car, introduced a couple of people. I walked to the edge of the cliff right behind my house. And I never seen anything like the Argo farm. It was the, I can try to explain it in words, but for those of you that have seen it, you know what I'm talking about. It's impossible. It's like I can show you like musical notes on sheets, or I can take you to the orchestra. It was like breathtaking, majestic. It really felt like my soul sort of leaped out of my body for just a little bit. Like breathtaking. Like it took my breath away. The breath in Hebrew is neshama. Neshama is soul. It just like took my soul away a little bit. And just dazzling and confused of what could be so beautiful. And then it was like my soul was just like connected to that place. I didn't know that eventually it would bring me and my 6 children, my wife, to a mountain in the edge of Jewish settlement in Israel. But I just, at that point, I felt like for the first time I understood what happened to Abraham. Abraham didn't hear a booming voice out of the sky. It said, Lech lecha, go to yourself, to the land that I will show you. It was an inner voice, an inner calling, an inner intuition that he lived by. And that actually is the heart of it all, to live by that inner voice that's inside us, guiding us in our life. And you know, as soon as I got there, it was like, guard this land, protect this land. You weren't connected to you. But I didn't really know what that would mean for me in my own life. But I knew that something happened. And I was going to be true to that. To be true to that. That's why Jerusalem is called the city of truth. Meaning right now the world is trying to convince us that there is no truth. That's actually the war here. There's no good, there's no evil, there's no right, there's no wrong, there's no boy, there's no girl, there's just whatever you, that's actually what the heart of it. It's like, no. There is a truth, but only you know your truth. And to live a guided life means to be true to the truth that you know in your life. And other people won't necessarily understand you, but you know what's true, and you know when you're violating that truth, because that little whistle inside you kind of like goes, oh no, are you sure you want to do that? You know. It's easier sometimes to receive guidance of what not to do. Actually, if you just kind of sit at the edge of your bed at nighttime, you ask yourself, what's the one thing that if I just stopped doing that, my life would really go up a notch? I would just be happier, I'd be better. If I, that one thing, what is that one thing that I'm doing? That will almost come almost immediately to you. But sometimes it doesn't. And then sometimes you have to search. You have to sort of like, listen, open your eyes. And then for years, year and a half, I was struggling. I was like, I know that I need to be on this mountain, but what was I going to do? I lived in Neve Daniel. My wife is a lawyer. We don't live on mountains. We live in a village. Like, we live in a nice suburb of Jerusalem. I'm going to move to the deepest settlement in Israel. What if they knock my house down? What about the security? What about the Arabs? I mean, what's happening in Israel now is not a simple issue. I mean, we're going to go to the most contested real estate in the world and put my 6 kids there? I don't think I'm going to do that. But okay, I started to struggle then a little bit with like, ugh, I'm just not courageous enough to do that. And that's not a pleasant feeling. It's like all of a sudden I set an ideal of who I could be, and I'm not that person yet. I would rather not set that ideal at all and feel good about myself. Once I set that ideal and I put that pillar of fire over there and I said, that's the direction, that's where I should be, all of a sudden, God was in my life and I felt a little bit judged. And maybe that's the Hebrew secret why Elohim is one of God's names, but in the Torah it also means judge. It's interchangeable. Elohim means God and it also means judge. Because once you set an ideal, and God is the ultimate ideal, well, all of a sudden you now have a judge. You have a standard that you need to live by. So I started to struggle a little bit, like, ugh, why can't I be who I should be? Okay. Started to learn the Torah a little bit. And I realized that that's what it is to be Israel. That's what it means to be Israel. Jacob is given the name Israel, and it says, for you have struggled with man and struggled with God, and you shall prevail. That struggling of who we are now and who we could be if our soul was fully revealed, if we could just be that struggle, that tension, that actually is that is what it means to be Israel in the world. And so let me give you an example. I wake up early almost every day when I'm in Israel. I mean, really early. It's like early. But every morning that I wake up, I have a voice in my head. And it always says the same thing. Jeremy, go back to bed. Every morning. It's so early. Why are you going to, right? Everyone is like, what's that voice? But then another voice comes into my mind. And it's like, Jeremy, if you get up now, oh, you could get so much done. You'll have time to read. You can focus. You'll be a better father. You'll be a better husband. Oh, if you get the day, if you win the morning, you're going to win the day. Come on, get up now. You'll be better. Go do it, do it. And I'm like lying in my bed. I'm like, who are these people inside me that are talking to me like that? What is that? What is going on in there? It's like you pay attention a little bit. It's like with some sort of internal relic. What is happening there? And so, so the Torah explains that there actually are 2 souls that live inside us, 2 energies. One is our body, and it has its own life force. That's our body. And what does our body want? Our body wants sleep, comfort, food, pleasure, physicality. And then we have another life force inside us. That's the soul. And what does it want? It wants truth. It wants enlightenment. It wants love. It wants the Torah. It wants to be fully expressed in the world. And those 2 things are battling each other. And our soul, if we really go deep, if God is the sun, then each one of our souls is like a ray of light. It's literally a piece of his light inside us. So what is it to be Israel? It's to struggle with man and struggle with God and prevail. It's to say, okay, I have this battle inside me. My body wants to sleep, but my soul wants to get up and prevail. When you let your soul overcome your body, oh, now you've become Israel. That's the way it is. So that struggle is actually to be Israel in the world. And so, okay, I'm struggling, fine. I don't have the courage to sell my one asset, my life savings, and build a staff house on a property that the house won't even necessarily belong to me at the edge of Jewish South. I'm just not going to do that. That's too much. But, I'll just keep on taking steps toward that. So I'll plant a tree. I'll start building on there. Maybe one day I'll retire there. I know that I'm meant to be there, so I'm just going to take steps closer. Whatever I can do. Every time I have an opportunity to be on that mountain, I'm going to be on that mountain. And literally, a day has not gone by, 7.5 years now. If I was in the land of Israel, I was on that mountain. Every single day I went. It's almost like I had to go visit my soul. It was like stuck in the rocks there. It's just like a magnet pulling me to this mountain. Every single day I went there. Even if it was just to move a rock from one place to another, I just wanted to be there. And then it was 5 years ago, almost to the day now. And Tehillah and I went out to this evening of preparation. And it was preparing us for the High Holy Days, Rosh Hashanah. And Rosh Hashanah is when we commemorate the creation of the world. That was like that let there be light moment. We said God became king when he created his kingdom, this universe. And so I'm going to spend 2 days in synagogue. Tehillah and I said, we're going to go to an evening preparing ourselves to make those 2 days as meaningful as possible. And so we're there, and the rabbi has a clarinet and a guitarist and a percussionist, and there's music and prayer and meditation and Torah all mixed up into one evening, just like Torah like that can only be taught in the land of Israel. They don't teach that in Manhattan. I was just there for Shabbat. That's not the way they do it there. And so in the middle of the night, the rabbi says, it's Erev Rosh Hashanah now. It's the eve of Rosh Hashanah. It was Saturday night, and Rosh Hashanah was that Sunday. So this is the time on the biblical calendar when God was still dreaming up what he wanted for man before creation itself. So this is the most opportune time of the year to dream, because God is literally dreaming with you. And so now dream away. And he starts to play music, and I don't know how to dream on command. I don't know how to do that. My focus doesn't allow me to just dream on command. So I'm kind of looking at all these people around me, and they're kind of like very spiritual people, and they're all dreaming, and I'm kind of jealous. And my father, he's a neurologist. He's a doctor of the brain. And no one has any idea where thoughts come from. No one's figured that out. Like, how does a physical brain make non-physical thoughts? Dreams, no one has any idea what dreams are. Where dreams come from, no one knows. And so in the middle of the night, I'm just kind of listening to the music, kind of hopeless that I'm not really going to be able to dream, but I love music, so I'm just kind of listening to the beautiful music. And then the rabbi says, "Where are you now? Who's with you? What do you see? Put some color to it." And he starts kind of guiding us to make an image. And I don't know why an image came into my mind, but all of a sudden, I'm living on a mountain. And my kids are running through the grass, through some palm trees, and people are coming from all over the world, and they're working in the land and learning the Torah. And it's like, what? There's not even an electric line yet out on the mountain. How is that even possible? We can live on that mountain? That's crazy. Anyway, okay, great night. Thank you, Rabbi. Went back to bed, going home. All right, Tehillah and I were back at our house. We're both lying in bed, and Tehillah turns to me, and she says, "Jeremy, what did you dream?" And I said, "Oh, Tehillah, I had the most amazing dream. We were living alone on a mountain. Our kids are running through the grass, and people are coming from all over." And I tell her the whole dream. She jumps out of bed, and she's like, "I can't believe it." I'm like, "Can't believe it? What is she talking about?" I'm sure that I'd done something wrong. That's usually the dynamic in my relationship. And she bursts into the baby room. The baby wakes up. I hear books fumbling off the shelves. She pulls out a notebook, starts flipping through the pages, throws it on the bed, and says, "Read this." And I open it up, and I only met Tehillah when she was 19. We've been married now for over 20 years. I open up, and it's her journal from when she's a little girl. And it says, "It's my 18th birthday, and I just had the most powerful dream." So this is a dream before I ever met Tehillah. I had never read any of her journals. She had never thought about it. This was just a dream of a little girl, written down, put on a book, and then forgotten for 20 some odd years. "It's my 18th birthday, and I just had the most powerful dream. I'm living alone on a mountain with my husband, and my children are running through the grass through palm trees, and people are coming from all over the world and volunteering and learning the Torah and praying on the mountain." And I'm like, well, what is this? What is this dream that you had? Did you wear a lawyer with high heels? We don't live on a mountain. What is this dream? Oh my God. And then the last two verses go like this. The last two sentences in her diary entry. "I don't know how I'm going to get there. I'm going to need a partner to take me. But I believe this is what Hashem has for me in my life." And so, what do you do with that? All I ever wanted in my life was to try to live a guided life. And how many dreams did Joseph get? 2. And those 2 dreams guided his entire life, all the way down to Egypt, being sold into slavery. Then he's thrown into prison, and then he makes his all the way up to second to Pharaoh and saves all of Israel. Just 2 dreams guided him. And all of a sudden, I'm given this amazing guidance of a dream that I had just had, that she had, before I even knew her. As we're struggling, what should we do with this? And this is what, okay, I guess we're going to sell the house. But I'm like, sell the house? But what about our money? What about our children? I have 6 children. What will they do when they come home to a mountain alone? I have to play with them. I'm going to have to, that's very hands-on parenting. That's a lot. Like right now, there's like a whole village. There's friends, there's kids, my brother, there's like a whole thing. We'll be alone on a mountain. Tehillah is a lawyer. I haven't won an argument in 20 years. Living alone on a mountain with a lawyer, that is not a good strategy for life. I'm going to live alone? What if she fights with me? Who will be my friend? I should be alone with Tehillah and sheep? I'm going to go talk to sheep now. Who will I be my friend? I'm like, bah, bah. Like that, me alone with sheep on a mountain with my lawyer wife. I'm not going to do that. That's crazy. But then I'm looking at this, the Gimpel. What am I going to do with that? What do you do with that? I mean, in some ways, I really felt like I lost my free will. Like my whole life, I'm going to live with this cloud hovering over me. Why didn't you follow the dreams that I gave you? Like, I just couldn't live my life with such a regret. I couldn't allow myself to live my life with that cloud hovering over me for the rest of my life. What would my life have looked like if I wasn't such a coward? If I just did what I knew was right from the beginning, and here I'm getting this guidance to do it. Okay, that's it. Taylor, we're selling the home. And we put our house on the market, and it sold within 3 weeks, which is too fast. Too fast. I didn't have enough time to really kind of get to know what was going to happen, like let it seep in. But like once you sign a contract and the money is wired, that bridge is burned. Like you can't really go back. You have to get out of that house in 4 months or whatever the time is that the contract says, and you're out. And I want you to know I served in 3 different wars in Israel, 3 different operations, mostly out of the Gaza Strip. Those 7 months from selling my home and then eventually moving to the farm and living on the farm for the first few months, those were the hardest months of my life by far. Nothing ever comes close. No wars against the Hamas. Nothing could ever, it was just so, I was living a guided life. I was sure that everything was going to go according to plan. Miracles were happening to us, and we were being guided, so okay. It was as if the gates of hell opened up in my life. And everything that could go wrong went wrong on me at the same time. And so, you know that we're the deepest settlement in Israel. And we talk about, well, if every generation has its chapter. So there was one generation that had to fight the Nazis. One generation had to declare Israel as a state again. And then one generation had to ingather the exiles from Ethiopia and Russia and build this country. And here we are in 2023. What is the mission of our generation? Well, it seems like there's 2. One is to bring the Torah to the righteous among the nations. And the second is to inherit the land of Israel for all generations. So if that's actually the move of this generation, being at the tip of the spear of God's move back into the land of Israel, we're going to meet resistance there. I mean, I knew that. I knew going into it that we were going to meet resistance. I just didn't know what that resistance would look like. And all of a sudden, I get registered mail, a note in my post box. Registered mail? Why registered mail? What's that about? So I go to the post office and I sign off on this registered mail, and I'm being sued in Israel's Supreme Court by Norway, Denmark, and Germany. Have sued us in Israel's Supreme Court. They paid lawyers in Israel to sue us, to destroy our house of prayer, to destroy my home that was already like 80% done, uproot all of our vineyards, uproot the trees, destroy everything that we had built. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to be homeless. I'm going to be penniless. I have 6 kids. What am I going to tell Tehila's parents? They didn't like this idea to begin with. I'm just not going to tell them. I'm just not going to tell them about Norway, Denmark, and Germany. I mean, Tehila is a lawyer, but she's like a family lawyer. Supreme Court, real estate in the West Bank. Like, we're going to lose. They have unlimited money. We're going up against nation states. Like, that is insane. And just to realize how insane that is, imagine now all the problems that are in Europe right now. If it's illegal immigration or corona or inflation or the war in the Ukraine or so many problems. 4 Jewish families are making a farm in the desert. Quickly, Norway, Denmark, and Germany, we must stop these Jews from making a farm in the desert? What? What is that? Like, if you can explain that to me logically and not like, that's just proof that there is a spiritual battle that is raging underneath the political veneer. There's like something that's going on, because that doesn't make any sense logically. If I were to go to Arizona and make a place for prayer and worship and healing in the desert, I would get an award from the governor for bringing tourism to the desert. Here I'm being sued by nation states to destroy a Jewish farm in the desert. Like, what? Why is that happening? Because we're meeting the resistance there. That's what's happening now. It's like the nation's like, no, you cannot inherit the promise. And it's like, well, it was promised. It is the promised land promised us. That is the covenant that was made with Abraham, is to inherit the land. So I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to, one foot in front of the other. Just going to keep on just moving to the farm. That's what we got to do. Just keep on moving to the farm. 2 weeks after that, I get an email from a Jewish woman from Switzerland. And she had come to the farm about a year earlier. And she listens to our podcast, member of the Land of Israel Fellowship. Now she is, at least. And she said, I keep on hearing about this farm that you're building. I want to see it. I'm coming from Sweden or Switzerland just the next week. I would love to come and see it. We're like, well, we know that's our mission, is to bring as many people as possible to the mountain. So we're like, okay, nothing else is happening on this mountain. Well, she stood on this porch overlooking the mountains and the Dead Sea. She turned white. She started shaking and started to cry. Ari thought she was having a heart attack because she's an elderly woman. And we're like, oh, Lisa, what's happening here? Was everything okay? And she's like, you don't understand. My whole life, I've had a very particular dream, a dream that's haunted me, of a very specific place. I knew it was in Israel, with mountains and valleys and rocks in a very specific way. And my whole life I've had this dream. And every time I come to Israel, I've been to the Golan, and I've been to the Negev, and I've been to the Shomron, and I've looked for this place. And eventually I'm just an old woman. I said, I'm never going to find it. And here I am looking at the place that's been in my dreams as long as I can remember. How much money do you need to finish off the whole retreat center? And Ari's like, $800,000? Because that's as many dollars as there were in the world at that time. He didn't know. He just sort of said those words. And she's like, okay, I'm going to help you finish the retreat center. And we're like, oh, dreams in this woman's life before we were even born. I mean, it was that kind of thing that happened so many times that gave us the courage to sell our house and move out. God was doing something here. Well, I get an email from this woman, and she says, I'm so sorry to tell you, I've been notified by the Swiss government that every dollar that I've given to Israel over the last year is to be taxed 100%. I'm like, taxed 100%? We're a tax-deductible organization in America and in Israel. Tax you 100%? That's evil. Why tax you 100%? And she's like, I'm very sorry, but listen, if with this case, I won't even have enough money to pay all the taxes. I definitely won't be able to finish my commitment. I won't be able to finish the retreat center. I'm very sorry. And I'm like, well, that's a disaster. I guess we'll have to get lawyers and accountants to help her get out of this tax issue now. And our contractor, though, I have a contract with this contractor. Well, I've got to call him tomorrow and tell him that I'm not going to be able to pay him. So I call up our contractor and I said, listen, I'm very sorry, but right now she said that she's not going to be able to wire the money as she's done every single month. And if she doesn't have the money, our nonprofit is not going to have the money to pay you. I'm really sorry, but just make plans accordingly because it might be a dry spell that's coming on right now. And he's like, a dry spell? What are you talking about? I'm like, well, the Swiss government, there's an anti-Semitic policy. And he's like, I'm not a politician. I have workers that I need to pay. I have supplies that I've purchased. We have a contract, and I want my money. I'm like, yes, I understand you want your money, but I'm just saying that if we don't have any money to give you, we're going to be in a little bit of a conflict of interest because we don't have any money. We're not going to have the money to pay you. And he's like, well, if you don't have the money to pay me, two things are going to happen. One, I'll see you in court. I'm like, another lawsuit, another lawsuit. And I'm out of this whole project. And I'm like, wait, not out of the whole project. The retreat center, that's under the nonprofit. We're going to help figure that out. My personal house, I sold my home to build my staff house on this property. Please don't leave me without a house. I have to get out of my house in about another month. I won't have anywhere to go if you don't finish my house. And he's like, if I don't get my money, I'm out. And then 1 week later, he said, he came back and he's like, all right, time for payment. And I'm like, listen, I'm sorry, we just don't have the money. And he's like, you don't have the money. You have sheep. I'm like, you can pay in sheep? And so he's like, yes, I'll take the sheep. And our first flock of sheep, 70 sheep, Abu Shadi, our contractor, took our sheep. And I remember looking at them as they're being trucked. I'm like, bye, sheep. You can pay in sheep. It's like we're in biblical times here. I'm paying in sheep. And so that sort of bought us another week. And then the next week came. He's like, okay, I want my next payment. I'm like, there's just no payment. I'm sorry, there's just no money to pay you. He's like, well, I'm out. I'll see you in court. I'm like, oh, okay. Tehillah, I'm sorry, our house isn't ready. I don't know what to say. But we had to get out of our house. So then like Abraham and Sarah, we just went nomadic. And we're like, all right. I was like, kids, we're going to go 2 weeks to the beach in Ashkelon. And my kids are like, yay, because it was summertime. And I'm like, yay. Okay, with all of our stuff. 6 kids, all of our stuff. Okay, we're in the beach for 2 weeks. Okay, we're going to Tveria for 2 weeks. The kids are like, yay. I'm like, oh no. Then we went to my parents for 2 weeks until they kicked us out. Then we went to her parents for 2 weeks until they kicked us out. And eventually we're like, I guess we just got to move to the farm. We just got to move there. But you have to understand, I promised Tehillah security dogs and cameras and systems. We didn't have a door. And security dogs, we had a chihuahua named Dreidel. A chihuahua was my last line of defense. So I'm now living in the most contested real estate in the world. I don't have a front door. We have a compost toilet. Do you know what a compost toilet is? It's like a closet outside your house. And so school has started. I'm like trying to get my kids on the compost toilet. Like, Emuna, on the compost toilet. Okay, Noam, you're on the compost toilet now. We have a school bus 3 mountaintops away we got to get to. And I'm like going to bed at 12, waking up at 3 to do guard duty from 3 until 6. Ari's doing it from 12 until 3. I'm waking up. I'm exhausted. We don't have a door. Our electricity's not, it's like an extension cord, so we can't really turn on the AC and the dryer, so we have to time the dryer. I'm like, what is my life? This is my life. What have I done to myself? This is my life now. I don't know what, so I'm literally going to bed at night, and it's embarrassing because I'd like to be a strong, courageous man, but I'm literally like in the fetal position, crying myself to bed, like, what have I done to myself? I did it to myself. That was the worst part. I could have just stayed in my house. I would have a beautiful life. Now I have a compost toilet, and Chihuahua is my guard dog. What am I going to do? And I was nervous what it was going to do to my marriage, because marriage is not a simple thing. It's like, constantly you've got to work on yourself and got to fix yourself. And she's figuring out, and like put yourself through a lot of stress, like, okay, what's that going to look like? All of a sudden, a new love emerged in my relationship with my wife. I didn't know who I was married to until we moved to the farm. I didn't know that I was married to the strongest person in the world. I'm literally a puddle of water on the floor, crying myself to sleep, and Tehillah is like skipping around the house. We're following our dreams. Compost toilets, they're so ecological. Oh, we should have compost toilets all over the house. We should never have real toilets. And just so happy, and so never complained. I was like, you don't know how strong something is until you push it to its limits, or like a little bit past its limits. And I did it, I'm making the rock of Israel. Like Tehillah just never budged, never complained. And so like a new reality sort of was born on this mountain as we're struggling through this insane time. And it's like a roller coaster. Once you strap it on and then the roller coaster goes, even if you're not very happy with it, it's going up the mountain, you're like, oh no, it's gonna go down. You can't get off the roller coaster ride, but it's not a roller coaster ride, it's my life. I can't get off my life, it's my life. I'm getting up in guard duty and all. I'm like, I've made, in Hebrew you would say, a salat out of my life, a salad. That's just what do I do? It's like a tossed salad. My whole life is just like a mess. And so I'm just kind of like, being broken. That's what it felt like. I was being broken into pieces, and maybe something new would, I guess, emerge out of these broken pieces. A new puzzle would be reassembled. And so sometimes, if you can't hear the whistle, and sometimes in hard times, there's no room to hear whistles. You're being whacked in the face, so there's no room for whistles. You're just being corrected. So what do? I'm like, okay, I have no guidance. I have no reception. From Abraham starts to walk, Lech Lecha, until he gets to the land of Israel, that's a long journey. And there's just a black period where he has no reception. He has no revelation. He's just walking in faith. And you can imagine the conversations. Sarah's like, Abraham, where are we going? I don't know. When are we going to get there? I don't know. Like, how long can he pull that off and still like have shalom in his home? But he's just walking and walking and walking. And then like the holidays end and we start learning the Torah portion. And I'll tell you, there's something amazing about the Torah. The Torah doesn't mean book. Bible means book. Torah is a verb. The word Torah is a verb. It's not a book. It's not a noun. It's a guide. It is a living word. It is guiding us right now. And sometimes if you have questions and you're looking for guidance and you can't get it from the inside, sometimes it will literally come from his word. And there is one word that goes out to all believers and all the Jews everywhere around the world. The Torah portion of the week, it's something marvelous. That you can bump into a Jew in Orlando or in New York or in Hong Kong, and immediately you're all reading the same Torah portion. It's like the same word that goes down in so many now. Millions of believers all over the world are tapping into that same message. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to read the stories of Abraham for the first time. And never in my life did I get such strength from that story. And I'm reading the beginning, and it says, and God told Abraham, go to yourself, to the land that I will show you. And as I'm reading this, I'm like, gosh, I'm really trying to do just that, just to go to the place that you showed me. And if I were to tell you that the heart of the Torah is trying to teach us that we can live a guided life. That's the heart of it. Then I would write the Torah like this. Abraham heard the inner calling, walked to the land of Israel, built a palace, and lived happily ever after. The end. But that's not what happens to Abraham. Abraham arrives in the land. He doesn't enter into hundreds of thousands of shekels of debt because of the Swiss government. He has no food to eat. There is a hunger in the land, a famine. He almost dies of starvation. Getting into debt is bad. It's not fun. It's unpleasant. Dying of starvation because there's no food, that's much worse. And then he has to go down to Egypt to try to find food. And in Egypt, he doesn't find Norway, Denmark, and Germany. He finds another dictatorship called Pharaoh. And then Pharaoh kidnaps his wife. And then he finally makes his way back to Israel. He doesn't have to do guard duty around his house with a chihuahua. He has to go out to war against kings. And it's like, what is the Torah trying to teach us here, really? Live a guided life, and maybe you'll die of starvation, your wife will be kidnapped, and you'll have to go out to war. That is the worst sales pitch ever. Who is going to buy that? That is the worst sales pitch. Why would you write that? No one is going to want to do that. Then I realized that the Torah is not a sales pitch. It's just being honest. It's saying that even if you live a guided life, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. In fact, it was the challenges and the struggles and the tests and the obstacles that Abraham had to overcome time and time again that built him into the man who he became, the most influential man in human history, the father of many nations, the father that's going to bring us all together. It was the struggles and the obstacles that actually built him into who he was. And so, the times ahead of us, they're challenging, they're hard, a lot is going on. But if we realize that this is the next chapter, so two things we need to know. What's happening in this room is totally aligned with biblical prophecy. That the righteous among the nations will pull themselves out of the mainstream realities around them and attach themselves to Israel. And the second thing is that Malachi says a sun is going to rise up, the dawn of a new era. And that sun for the wicked is going to burn them. But to the righteous, they'll experience that sun like healing. The same sun comes up, and two things happen. The righteous experience it like healing heat, and the wicked burn them. So what is that teaching us? If we prepare ourselves now, and we align ourselves with God's will, that God's will be done in our life, then when the sun comes up, because the sun is coming up, like we can already see the sunrise, like the sun rays are like peeking up over the mountains. I mean, in Israel, what's happening now is it's the last death throes of the secular left in Israel. Right now, all of Israel's power is in one political branch, the judges. They are the most powerful branch in Israel. They are the first say, the last say, the final say, and they elect themselves. In America, sometimes a Democrat can elect some judges, sometimes a Republican can elect judges, and there's some sort of balance. In Israel, that's not the case. The most radical left-wing secular Israelis that aren't even represented anymore in Israel's Knesset are the judges, and they rule. Now, isn't that beautiful? The book right before King David appears, which is the book of Samuel. Do you know what that book is called? The book of Judges. And so we are now transitioning from the book of Judges into the book of King David. And so what we're experiencing now in Israel is an absolute clash of worlds. The sun is coming up. And so what we need to do is we need to prepare ourselves. We need to prepare ourselves. That's why the beginning of the Torah is the story of the flood, Noah's flood. The end of the Bible is the story of Gog and Magog, of Armageddon. And it's like bookends. The flood, chaos, the end, chaos. What is that telling us? The flood is going to come. But if you build yourself an ark, you get to go on a cruise. If you build yourself an ark, you get to go on a cruise. The sun will come up and it will actually be a pleasure. It will be something that we look forward to. It'll be a sun of healing. That's actually what we need to be working ourselves toward, because with all of the chaos, what I can already see in the mountains of Judea is The first lights of redemption are coming now. And so we are going to win. We are already winning. And that's really important. Why was the Bible, why was the Tanakh written over so many hundreds of years? This is so important to know. There's a verse in Hebrew from the book of Psalms that King David teaches us, and it's a little bit mistranslated, or at least I want to offer a new interpretation. It says, Hodu laHashem ki tov, ki le'olam chasto. Give thanks to God, for he is good. His love endures forever. Ki le'olam chasto. That's usually how it's translated. But I want to teach you another way to read that. Ki le'olam chasto. For God's love is in le'olam. You find God's love in eternity. That only with an eternal view of the whole story can you see God's love. Sometimes when you're just in one page of the story, that's really hard. That's really challenging. No, you need le'olam chasto. In le'olam, in the eternal view of the whole picture, that's where you find God's love and kindness. And so we should all be blessed that we see God's kindness. Le'olam chasto, in eternity. To take a bird's eye view and see the whole picture that's unfolding. You know, my grandfather, he walked from Bialystok to Israel in 1916 when he was 15 years old. And I'm here in America now with my 16-year-old. It's kind of a belated bar mitzvah trip because his bar mitzvah sort of fell on COVID and all of that chaos. So now he's kind of come with me for a week to the United States. And I'm looking at him and he's a great young man growing into being. But I think about, man, he's so young. A backpack on his back, walking for a year and a half to get to the land of Israel. Like, he's amazing. He's not that amazing. That's like unbelievable. That's what my grandfather did. And even now when we go up to Tiberias and we see 100-year-old eucalyptus trees, like my family takes great pride in those trees. Because like his great-grandfather, my grandfather, he had his hand planted those 100-year-old eucalyptus trees that drained the swamps of the north. Now in 1916, there were 60,000 Jews in the land of Israel. 2016, there were over 6 million. Never in the history of the world has there been a population explosion from 60,000 to over 6 million. And then what do we see in the Bible? The most prophesied event in the Bible is the ingathering of the exiles. And then, ki le'olam chasto. Oh, we need 100 years to really see that picture unfolding. And then you realize, oh, the train has left the station. Like, we're on our way. There may be some peaks and valleys up and down along the way, but there is a very clear trajectory. And the trajectory is that God is bringing us all the way to a new Jerusalem. And so I wanted to come here from Israel. You know, I only spoke in 4 different locations on this trip. And I had to really kind of like go into my heart. Who are the people that are the nearest and dearest to me? And the fellowship tops the list. And so I wanted to come here just with a message of hope. That first, we are going to win. The train has left the station. And the second one is that when we realize that really God is trying to help us, guide us, then it doesn't matter what background you come from, what religion you practice, or theology you grew up with. That's not really your fault, or it's like that's how you grew up. Maybe you grew up in a home that taught you that. But if you live a guided life, God will guide us all the way to a new Jerusalem, in his own ways that are beyond our ways, in his thoughts that are beyond our thoughts. If we try to align ourselves with his will be done through us, and he will take us all the way to the end. And so that's why, probably just in this audience here, we could probably have theological conversations until Mashiach comes. And then at the end, you know what we could do? We could take all of those theological debates, put them aside, and then we could all pray to God like we just did at the very beginning. And that's why the temple in Jerusalem is called a house of prayer for all nations. Because then that leaves room. You can have your theology, you can have your understanding, you have your background, you have your education, you have your family, you have your culture. Oh, but we're all praying to God. Oh, we're all coming together to sing hallelujah. And so, please God, I hope to see you all when the fellowship comes this upcoming year. Because the theater of redemption, the center stage, it's really unfolding now. Imagine witnessing the transition from the book of Judges to the book of King David. That's an exciting thing to watch. And so thank you all tonight.
What can I say after that? So tonight I want to give everyone here an opportunity to vest into what's happening there at Ghana Ragut. As a congregation, we've committed ourselves many times to help as best as we could. We're not a very rich congregation, but God will allow us from time to time to come up with just enough money to support. And so we've done that a few times, and we hope to do it again. But we want to extend that to everyone here tonight to get involved, to invest into what God is doing on that mountaintop. Tremendous insight that Jeremy brings, and he always brings this incredible insight. I knew that was the wilderness of Ziph. I knew it. And that's where King Jeroboam took the armies of Israel and the priests to stand and look to the army that had assembled against Israel, against Judah. I knew that was the wilderness of Ziph, but I never really put it together. That yes, that's where King David would have, in fact, hide out from King Saul. Because it's right there in Gedi. Just up the road from Engedi is the wilderness of Ziph. So tremendous insight. He comes here, he challenges me to think, and I want to go study, I want to go prepare, but I can never be like that. Tremendous, tremendous insight. So we deeply appreciate what Jeremy brings. He brings a very strong Jewish perspective on Torah, which is good. And so tonight we want to be able to invest into this wonderful, wonderful work that God has allowed us to be a part of. So I want to ask for a couple of guys to come up, maybe 4 guys. Normally our ushers are about this tall. Do we have any ushers about that tall? Ushers? Our ushers are normally this tall. I guess we don't have enough of them here tonight. So tonight you're going to get the big ushers, the big guys. All right. So I want to just thank God for this time. Thank God for his presence. It's a rare and precious thing when a rabbi speaks to a group of Christians and the presence of God is powerful. Let that interfere with your theology for a moment. Contemplate it. Father God, we thank you, Lord, for the tremendous love and mercy that you've shown us. And you've allowed us, oh Lord, to see things and to hear things that are marvelous. And we are glad. And so, God, we thank you, Lord, for restoring Zion. We thank you, Lord, for giving us eyes to see and minds that can even comprehend the awesomeness of what you are doing. Yes. And God, we bless you. We thank you, Lord, and we praise you to be a part of this wonderful generation. Yes. Generation of the Geula, the great redemption. We thank you, Lord. Amen. before we head over for our own egg, I want to encourage you a little bit to consider everything that you've heard tonight from Rabbi Jeremy and all that you've heard in the past. And put that together, assemble it in your minds, do the math. We live in a very awesome time. It's not the Christianity of 50 years ago. It is not the Christianity of 100 years ago. It's perhaps the most ancient of Christianities. But we're going to a different place. We're going to a place that Christianity has never gone, not even the most ancient of Christianities. Higher place, a place of more profundity. There's a nice word, profundity, but a place of power, a place of service. So Jeremy spoke about Zechariah too, and that's wonderful, good, powerful. I also want to add to that the reality of Isaiah chapter 56. Isaiah saw a people of foreigners, comprising of foreigners, that would become special servants in God's courts. The Hebrew word is saris. Our Bible says eunuchs. That's not a good word. I don't like it, really. Painful to hear. But the actual Hebrew word is saris. Court officials. You know the English word chamberlain. You know what a chamberlain is? What's a chamberlain? A special servant. So Isaiah saw of the nations a people, foreigners, who would be zealous for Shabbat. They would serve God and they would be zealous for Shabbat, but not just Shabbat, but for his people. They would say, Isaiah said that they would say, do not separate us from your people and leave us rendered a dry tree. This is what Isaiah saw 2,600 years ago. Isaiah saw this time. He saw you. And you are not dry trees because God has allowed you to be joined to his people, to celebrate his Shabbat. But the most amazing thing about the Saris is that they would live in his temple. They would be a part of his temple. And his temple, his house, will be called a house of prayer for all the nations. Put it together. Put it together. Isaiah in Isaiah 66, he saw a people from the nations that God will appoint to be a priesthood. Go look at it. He said, I will choose some of them to be priests. Kohanim. That's who you are. That's who you are. What can be more rich than that? What can be more, what can be a better prize? What can we look for more than that? This is available to you. This generation of Christianity has it. It's right before us. And all we have to do is do what Jesus said. Abandon your life. Abandon your life for the sake of God's kingdom. So, that's it. And it's yours. It is yours. It is the Father's good pleasure to give the kingdom to you. I want to encourage you tonight to bear this as you go. Now we're going to sing one more song. You know that we are the congregation of one more song. And that actually can go on and on and on and on, right? We almost did that a few times. If we're the congregation of one more song, where does it end? But we're going to sing one more song at least. And the song that we're going to sing is special to me and special to us. Shoshana Shilu at Kedumim years ago wanted us to sing this song, Lemanachai. And she said, you really, you know Shoshana Shilu, right? She's one of these Israeli women that she was a commander, she was a lieutenant, I think, in the army. And she, real take charge, you know. Love her to death. I don't love many strong women, but this is a strong woman that I really love. I mean, I dearly, dearly love this woman. And she said, you must learn this song. Let me sing it for you. And she sang it for us. And we were like, oh, can't recognize the key. What is going? So we never learned it. 10 years later, we learned it. And we sing it every Shabbat, just about. So let's sing this song, Lamanakai. What is the song about? What is the song about? Lamanakai. What passage is it taken from? Psalm 102. What is Psalm 122 about? It's about his house. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. How many Christians say that? How many Christians pray that prayer because they want to prosper? But how many Christians truly understand that it's about God's house and the reality of what his house will be? Don't be like the Christians out there who say, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, they shall prosper that love thee. Don't be like that. Know the reality of who you are. Saris, chamberlains in God's court. And that's going to happen. That's going to happen with or without us. It's going to happen. God's bringing it to fruition. Praise God. So we know this song well. We can sing it by heart. Let's sing this song.